Joining me now in the studio is our world affairs analyst, Marco Vicenzino. Marco, so the Houthi rebels have accepted this ceasefire offered by the Saudi-led coalition then, but how stable is it? And are either of the sides likely to break the agreement, considering the ceasefire that was agreed in the first time by the Saudi-led coalition?
This is very fragile, but pressure is being piled on by the unfolding humanitarian situation. So that increases the chance of it more likely to work when compared to before. But throughout this process, the UN plays a key role. The UN has to ensure that both sides of the conflict are complying with the ceasefire, and secondly, the UN has to play a key role in delivering necessary aid.
In terms of how much of the bombing is attributed to a Saudi show of strength, what sort of scale do you think it's kind of aligned to? Because they've allegedly raised the house of the former president, President Saleh. Do you think it's a Saudi show of strength and propaganda here? Basically,
on the bombing of the house of former President Saleh, it's basically sending a clear message to Saleh. It's don't interfere with the ceasefire and don't interfere with the diplomatic process. They don't want his face at the negotiating table, but they're fully aware that he does have a lot of influence behind the scenes, and basically also has a lot of influence and control of key segments of the army, of the Yemeni army. So in that sense, although they don't want to deal with them directly, they know that there will be an indirect dealing with them.
There are also factions within the region, Marco, such as the Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula group, who are seeking more influence. Could further destabilization in Yemen see their rise?
They've been rising exponentially. They have already made territorial gains, basically took control of a port, took control of an airport. This type of instability is key for them. They need this type of instability to be able to grow and to be more effective. In that sense, yes, the more instability, the better for ACAP.
And what do you think that the US makes of the ongoing conflict in Yemen? Because the Iranian-backed sort of Houthi rebels well, Iran has struck a deal with the US in terms of sort of nuclear disarmament and also releasing of sanctions on Iran. Do you think that that's going to play a part in how the US negotiates with Iran in the future?
Yemen won't make or break the final signing of a nuclear deal. A nuclear deal ultimately will be based upon the merits. But I think if conflict does continue, it can, from a U.S. perspective, it can present an unnecessary distraction that they'd rather do without.
What do you think is the sort of long-term solution here in Yemen? Because this conflict's been going on for many years in one sense. The bombing and the airstrikes have started since the end of March. Do you think this will carry on for a while yet?
Although if this ceasefire does endure these 5 days and it builds up some sort of a momentum, it's the key thing in the ceasefire. It says the word is renewable. So if it can be done on a series of renewals. But the main thing is that you need the UN, the external parties, and particularly the UN, has a key role, because they're the only ones that can make sure that this process moves forward. There's no trust between both sides, so you need the external party to be able to begin a process of confidence-building measures over a long period of time. Eventually, down the road, if a settlement is reached, although the outsiders do have a key role, it's ultimately up to the Yemeni parties themselves. They must have the will to come to table and say and make the concessions necessary, each side, to ensure long-term stability.
Do you think there's any call for intervention from one of the Western forces to go into the country?
It's a possibility. You cannot exclude that possibility that although the UN has to ensure that the ceasefire endures, it may require a peacekeeping operation. President Hadi, the internationally recognized president of Yemen, made it clear this past week that he does want a UN peacekeeping force. But to do so, you need a Security Council resolution, and you need other countries to contribute, which requires resources and money, and making sure that there's the dangers of a peacekeeping operation. Many of these countries don't want to get involved in a possible quagmire.
Sure. Marco Vicenzino, thank you very much indeed for that. It's lovely to speak to you.